Every grower knows that gut-wrenching moment, you know. You've poured your heart and soul into your plants, watched them flourish, only to discover an uninvited guest, some tiny marauder, trying to undo all your hard work.
Oh, yeah. It can feel like an impossible battle sometimes, a constant struggle against these invisible enemies almost.
Right. But what if there was a smarter way? A more, natural way to protect your cannabis, a way that actually transforms your grow space into this vibrant sort of self-regulating ecosystem.
That's exactly what we're diving into today. Welcome, everyone. We're doing a deep dive into the fascinating world of all-natural cannabis pest management. And we've gathered an incredible stack of sources for you, drawing from permaculture principles, really detailed cultivation guides, even cutting-edge scientific research on natural compounds.
So what's the mission today?
Our mission is pretty clear: to equip you with the essential knowledge. How to identify the most common cannabis pests, really understand their life cycles, that's key, and, most importantly, master these all-natural integrated pest management, or IPM strategies.
JPM, right?
Yeah, so you can keep your cannabis healthy and thriving without ever resorting to those harsh, ecosystem-damaging chemicals.
Yeah, we definitely want to avoid those.
Okay.
And we'll uncover why preventing pests is, infinitely better than fighting them later, right?
Absolutely. Prevention is huge.
We'll introduce you to a whole living army of beneficial insects, microbes, all ready to defend your plants. And we'll reveal some surprising natural remedies. Some even come from cannabis itself.
That's a fascinating angle we'll get into.
So if you're ready for a shortcut to being truly well-informed about keeping your cannabis crop in, tip-top condition, stick with us. Okay, let's unpack this. All right, so before we can even think about defense strategies, we absolutely need to know who we're actually up against.
Exactly. Know your enemy.
It's like building a mental weed bug kit, Recognizing the enemy quickly is like half the battle, especially since these tiny things can just multiply like crazy.
Precisely. And you should think of pest problems less as isolated incidents and more as symptoms that your ecosystem is maybe a little out of balance.
That's a good way to put it.
Rapid identification is just crucial for a targeted natural response. It stops a minor nuisance from turning into this overwhelming infestation. So let's spotlight some of the most common pests cannabis growers run into, focus on the distinct signatures, and how to start tackling them naturally.
Okay, sounds good. So first up, let's talk about aphids, the sap-sucking swarm. If someone's just starting to suspect an issue, what's the main telltale sign they've got aphids?
Well, the most obvious visual cue is going to be yellowing and wilting leaves. They're literally sucking the life juice, the sap, right out of your plant.
Okay.
But here's an insider tip. Look for a sticky, shiny residue on the leaves. Almost looks like the plant is sweating. That's honeydew.
Honeydew.
Right.
It's their sugary waste product. And if that honeydew then starts to develop this black, kind of sooty mold, well, aphids have been actively feeding there for a bit.
Yeah. Any other signs?
Yeah, you might also spot their discarded white molts. They look like tiny, empty aphid skeletons clinging to the plant.
Creepy. And how do we actually spot the aphids themselves? Are they hard to find?
They're small, but you can usually see them. They come in all sorts of colors: green, red, black, brown, gray, which can help them blend in, sure, but they almost always cluster together on the underside of leaves. That's where they hide for protection.
Underside. Got it.
But what's truly alarming about aphids is just how fast they reproduce. A single female can pop out up to 10 live young nymphs per day.
10 a day. Wow.
Yeah, do the math. One aphid can lead to 100 in just 3 weeks. That's how infestations just explode.
Okay, so immediate action.
For immediate intervention, if it's a small group, you can often just, squish them with your fingers or spray them directly with a mild insecticidal soap solution.
Simple enough.
But for a more robust long-term solution, nature gives us amazing allies. Parasitic wasps, ladybugs, lacewing larvae. They are voracious aphid predators. They're key players in natural control.
We'll definitely dig into those beneficials later. Okay, next up, a pest many growers really dread. Spider mites, the web-spinning menace. I've heard these can be incredibly destructive.
Oh, they absolutely can be. Total nightmare fuel for some growers. The classic symptom is tiny yellow or white stippling on your leaves. Almost looks like someone sprinkled fine dust on them.
Simply. Oh.
Yeah, that's where they've punctured the plant cells and sucked out the chlorophyll. As the infestation gets worse, you'll start to see fine, silky webbing. It's especially visible if you, lightly mist the leaves.
The webs. That's the giveaway.
Big time. Severely infested leaves will shrivel up, turn yellow, and eventually die. Identifying them just with your eyes is tricky, though. They're incredibly tiny. You'll need at least a 15x magnifying glass to really see their 8 legs. Remember, they're mites, technically arachnids, not insects, and they often have 2 distinct spots on their back.
8 legs. And their reproduction rate. I heard it's bad.
It's terrifying. They multiply at breakneck speed, mature in about a week. A single female lays roughly 100 eggs every 5 days. And get this, a staggering 75% of those offspring are female.
Oh, man, that's exponential growth. What conditions do they love?
Yeah.
And what's the best natural fight back?
They thrive in warm temperatures, typically 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 27 Celsius. They can tolerate average to high humidity, though some sources say they adapt to almost anything. But here's a weakness. They really dislike humidity below 50%.
Okay, so manipulating humidity can help.
It can. Your first line of attack, though, should be physical.
Yeah.
Regular, strong jets of water, aim it right at the undersides of the leaves. It literally blasts the colonies off.
Power watching for pests.
Pretty much. It physically dislodges them, disrupts their webbing. Beyond that, the most effective natural counter is using predatory mites, specifically Phytocoelis persimilis or Neocoelis californicus.
Predatory mites, okay.
These guys are specialist predators for spider mites. They hunt them down relentlessly. Neem oil, too, applied as a foliar spray, is highly effective. It messes with their feeding and reproduction.
Good options.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on to whiteflies. The tiny moth-like invaders. You know, if you gently shake your plants, sometimes you see little white specks flutter away. Is that them?
Exactly. That's the easiest way to confirm they're there. Little white cloud erupts from under the leaves.
Right.
You'll also notice that general leaf yellowing, maybe reduced plant vigor, and just like aphids, that sticky honeydew, which can lead to sooty mold, they really prefer new soft growth for laying their eggs, again, on the undersides of leaves.
Always check under the leaves.
Always. We mainly deal with 2 types. The glasshouse whitefly, which rests with its wings flat, and the tobacco whitefly, which holds its wings more like a tent and often looks a bit yellower. The tobacco whitefly is also a known carrier of plant viruses, which makes it particularly nasty.
Viruses too. Ugh.
Yeah. Their life cycle goes egg, larva, pupa, then adult. And it's the mobile adults that transmit viruses as they feed.
So how do we stop them from multiplying and spreading disease?
Yellow sticky traps are incredibly effective. Whiteflies are strongly attracted to that color. Place them both low, near the soil, and hanging high up in the grow space.
Good for monitoring too, I bet.
Absolutely. But for biological control, the parasitic wasp Encarsia formosa is a total superstar. It lays its eggs directly into the whitefly larvae. The parasitized larvae turn black, and that's how you know it's working.
Wow.
Yeah, and they also host feed on the younger larvae, meaning they just eat them directly. For bigger infestations, fungal biopesticides like Beauveria bassiana can also work really well, especially if you can keep the humidity up.
Fungal pesticides. Interesting. Okay, then we have thrips, the speedy strip miners. That name sounds like they mean business.
They certainly do. What you'll see is tiny silver or white streaks on the top of your leaves. Almost looks like scratch marks. That's where they've literally strip mined the plant juices out.
Strip mine. Yikes.
Yeah, it makes the leaves brittle and crumbly. You might also spot tiny black lines. That's their feces. Thrips are really quick-moving, tiny insects with wings. Often hard to see individually, but they tend to move in herds.
Herds.
Yeah, like little swarms. And the female thrip actually bores a hole into the plant tissue to lay her eggs, which are microscopic. And here's the really bad part. They particularly love to reproduce and feed inside the buds.
Oh, no, not in the buds. That's terrible. How do you deal with something so small and fast that hides in there?
Well, strong air circulation is a simple deterrent. Thrips struggle to hold on and move around in turbulent air.
Okay, fans are key.
Definitely. Regular misting can also sometimes flood them off the leaf surfaces. But for direct action, predatory mites like Neocoelis cucumeris or Amblyseius andersoni are excellent thrips hunters.
More predatory mites. They seem really useful.
They're fantastic. Also, organic sprays containing pyrethrin or just insecticidal soap applied repeatedly can significantly knock back their numbers. Persistence is key with thrips.
Got it. Next on our list are fungus gnats, the annoying soil dwellers. The adults are mostly just a pain, right? Buzzing around.
That's true. The adults themselves are mostly just annoying. They're clumsy flyers attracted to yellow, but it's their larvae in the soil that cause the real damage.
The hidden enemy.
Exactly. They feast on roots, especially the fine root hairs, which can cause plants to look sick, droopy, just generally unhappy. They thrive in overly moist soil, feeding on decaying organic matter and algae that often grows on persistently wet topsoil.
So managing water is the first step.
Absolutely. The simplest first step is to reduce your irrigation frequency a bit. Let the top inch or two of soil dry out between waterings. This makes it less hospitable for the larvae and also helps control that algae growth they feed on.
Makes sense.
And place those yellow sticky cards horizontally right on the soil surface. That traps the adults trying to emerge or lay eggs and helps you monitor how bad the problem is.
Okay, and for a more powerful solution?
For a really powerful natural solution, you want beneficial nematodes, specifically Steinernema feltio. These are microscopic organisms you drench into the soil, and they actively hunt down and kill fungus gnat larvae.
Nematodes. Cool.
Yeah, they're great. Also, a dilute hydrogen peroxide solution, like 1 part 3% peroxide to 3 or 4 parts water poured carefully over the top of the grow medium, can quickly kill existing larvae on contact.
Good trick. And what about the bigger chompers, like caterpillars and inchworms? The foliage chompers?
These guys are usually easier to spot, mainly because of the damage they leave behind. You'll see large, irregular holes chewed all the way through the leaves.
Not just surface damage.
Right, actual holes.
Yeah.
And you'll often find small black droppings, they're frass, on the foliage nearby. They're the larval stage of moths or butterflies, obviously. Their green or brown color helps them blend in really well, so you gotta look closely. They often hide on leaf undersides or right along the stems.
Sneaky. Any particular ones love cannabis?
Hornworms can be especially notorious for cannabis plants and other plants in the nightshade family. The most direct method for control: hand picking.
Just pluck them off.
Literally, pick them off and dispose of them. Squishing works. For a biological solution, Bacillus thuringiensis, usually just called Brett, is highly effective.
Gliad, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a naturally occurring bacterium. You spray it onto the foliage, the caterpillars eat it, and it messes up their digestive system and kills them. Very targeted, very effective against caterpillars specifically.
Excellent. Now, for the artists of destruction, leaf miners.
Yeah.
The tunneling artists, you can almost see their work, right? The little trails.
Their damage is unmistakable. You see those characteristic light-colored winding trails or mazes of discoloration right across the leaf blades?
Like little maps.
Exactly. Those tunnels are created by the larvae burrowing through the leaf tissue, eating as they go. This reduces the plant's ability to photosynthesize, obviously, and the entry-exit points make the plant vulnerable to bacterial infections.
So it's the larvae again?
It's almost always the larvae. The adult flies resemble small house flies, but it's their unseen larvae doing the damage inside the leaf. Their activity usually peaks in spring and summer.
How do you control them if they're inside the leaf?
Well, for minor infestations, you can actually often squish the larva at the end of its tunnel right there within the leaf. Just follow the trail to the fat end and pinch.
Satisfying, maybe.
A little bit. You can also carefully remove heavily affected leaves, but again, the golden rule: avoid taking more than about 1/3 of the plant's total leaves at once. Don't stress the plant too much.
Right, biological option.
Yes, the parasitic wasp Diglyphus isaiah is an effective biological control. It finds the larvae inside their tunnels and lays its eggs in them. Neem oil applied as a foliar spray can also help deter the adult flies from laying eggs and can sometimes affect the larvae within the leaves, too.
Okay, shifting gears a bit to mealybugs. The cottony clusters, they sound, well, fuzzy and not in a good way.
Definitely not. You'll spot these white, waxy, almost cotton-like patches on the stems, and especially in the little nooks and crannies, like where leaves join the stem. Also on leaf undersides.
Cotton patches, okay.
And like aphids and whiteflies, they produce sticky honeydew. You'll often see ants attracted to mealybugs because they actually farm them for this honeydew.
Ants farming bugs, wow.
Yeah, it's a whole symbiotic relationship. But that honeydew then often leads to sooty mold growth. Infested leaves will yellow, wilt, and eventually drop off, and new growth might look stunted or just not mature properly.
They sound persistent.
They are. These slow-moving pests reproduce astonishingly fast in warm climates and can spread throughout the entire plant, even hiding deep within buds sometimes. They're really difficult to eradicate completely if you don't catch them early.
So, early detection again. What's the plan for small infestations?
For small infestations, you can physically wipe them off using a cotton swab dipped in rubbing alcohol. The alcohol dissolves their waxy coating. Insecticidal soaps and neem oil sprays are also effective contact killers, but you need persistent, thorough application because they hide so well.
Biological.
Introducing ladybugs and lacewings can also help control their numbers biologically. They'll eat mealybugs too.
Good to know. What about slugs and snails? The slimy trailblazers. Are they a big problem for cannabis, especially if you're growing outdoors?
They absolutely can be, particularly for young seedlings and clones, which are really tender and vulnerable. The signs are pretty obvious. Those translucent, shiny slime trails on leaves and surfaces.
The telltale slime.
Exactly. And large, irregularly shaped shoe holes in the leaves. They can decimate young plants really quickly. They're most active at night, and they love wet, shady spots, damp plant debris, mulch, underneath rocks, anywhere cool and moist.
So how do we stop these slimy invaders?
Prevention is key. Clean up potential hiding places like nearby wood piles or leaf litter. Ensure good airflow and sunlight around your outdoor plants to reduce dampness. You can create physical barriers. A thin line of diatomaceous earth or even salty sand around your plants can work wonders.
Diatomaceous earth again.
Yep, it desiccates them. Also, a copper ring or copper tape placed around the base of the plant stem can deter them. Apparently, the copper reacts with their slime and gives them a kind of electric shock.
Ouch. Any biological controls?
Yes, there are specific beneficial nematodes for slugs and snails. Phasmarhabditis californica is the one. You drench it into the soil and it parasitizes them.
Fascinating. Okay, we also have something called barnacles, or scale insects, the unmoving nutrient suckers. What are these exactly?
Yeah, these are weird ones. You'll notice unusual, often brownish, bumps or growths on the stems and sometimes the underside of leaves. They literally look like tiny barnacles or scales stuck firmly to your plant.
So they don't move.
Once they settle in and mature, they become stationary. They secrete a hard, protective shell, making them appear almost like a natural part of the plant's structure until you look really closely. They're sucking vital nutrients out, causing plants to become floppy, wilt, and generally look unhealthy.
And honeydew.
Like other sapsuckers, yep, they also excrete honeydew, which can lead to sooty mold. Because they're so difficult to remove once established due to that protective shell, prevention through regular inspection and maintaining overall plant vigor is really crucial.
How do you treat them if you find them?
For small numbers, you can physically scrape them off, maybe with a fingernail or a dull knife, or try dabbing them with a cotton swab dipped in rubbing alcohol or neem oil. Insecticidal soap can also help break down their protective layer, but it often takes repeated applications.
Tricky customers. Crickets are usually just, background noise on a summer night. But then there are crickets, regular and mole. The underground and foliage eaters. They eat plants.
Oh yeah, regular crickets will happily chew holes through leaves, and you might find them hanging out right in the plant's branches. Mole crickets, though, are a different beast. They're the silent destroyers.
Mole crickets?
Yeah, they burrow through the soil and feast directly on your plant's roots underground. Much harder to spot.
So how do you manage both types?
For both, regular inspection for damage and prompt action are key. For regular crickets hopping around the foliage, a simple rubbing alcohol and water spray can sometimes deter them. Or introducing general predators like ladybugs and lacewings might help manage their populations. For mole crickets, since they're underground, beneficial nematodes are a much more effective solution.
Nematodes to the rescue again. And a truly hidden threat. Root maggot, the subterranean destroyer.
This is one of the trickiest pests because all the damage happens completely underground. You won't see the culprit.
What are the symptoms then?
Your plant might just become less stable in the soil. Maybe the base of its stalk starts to yellow or darken severely, and upward growth might just stop. Maggot eggs are typically deposited by small flies like seed corn flies or cabbage flies that visit the base of your plant.
So the flies lay eggs in the soil.
Exactly. If you gently disturb the loose soil right at the base of the plant, you might see small, white, wriggly larvae chomping away at the roots.
Prevention.
The absolute best prevention is to always use new, sterilized soil for every growth. Don't reuse soil if you suspect any issues. For existing problems, those parasitic nematodes like Steinernema feltio are excellent as they actively seek out and kill the larvae right there in the soil. A soil drench of neem oil can also poison existing root maggots and inhibit their eggs.
Neem oil and soil drench seems versatile. Then there are harmful nematodes, the invisible root adversaries. Wait, I thought nematodes were beneficial.
Oh, good catch. Yes, there are beneficial nematodes we want in our soil, like the ones that kill fungus gnats and root maggots. But there are also harmful plant parasitic nematodes. These are the bad guys.
Okay, so how do you know if you have the bad ones?
It's incredibly difficult to detect. Plants just show slow growth, yellowing leaves, a general decline. It often looks exactly like a nutrient deficiency, maybe nitrogen deficiency, but there are no visible pests above ground. These harmful nematodes are mostly microscopic and attack the roots directly.
What do the roots look like?
Infested roots will often feel soft, mushy, and might start to fall apart when you handle them. The best way to be sure is actually to get a soil sample analysis done by a lab.
Wow, okay, so prevention is key here too.
Absolutely paramount. Using clean, sterilized soil every time is the best defense, as reusing soil can allow populations of harmful nematodes to build up over time. And if you do suspect them, a neem oil soil drench is your primary organic weapon against these unseen enemies.
Okay, finally we have symphalids, the persistent root hair feeders. What are these?
These are small, burrowing arthropods. They look a bit like tiny white millipedes, maybe up to 6 millimeters long. They live underground and chew through your plant's delicate root hairs.
Root hairs, that sounds bad.
It is. It severely damages the root system's ability to absorb water and nutrients. This also leaves the roots really vulnerable to secondary fungal infections. If left unchecked, symphalids can eventually lead to plant death. It's often a slower infestation, but they are highly persistent.
How do you detect them?
Sometimes, if you water the soil roughly, you might see them float to the surface for a second before they quickly zip back down for cover. They can burrow incredibly deep, like up to 7 feet, to escape harsh conditions like dryness or cold.
7 feet. Wow. How do you tackle something so persistent and deep burrowing?
It's tough. One strategy is to carefully reduce soil moisture to the bare minimum needed by the plant. This can sometimes force them deeper into the soil, away from the main root ball. For a more direct attack, some growers have found success with a simultaneous soil drench of neem oil combined with a tobacco juice solution.
Tobacco juice.
Yeah, it sounds old school, but steep about 10 cigarettes in a gallon of water until it's a light tea to coffee color. Apply that along with the neem drench. You might need to repeat it a few times. But again, always prioritize clean soil to avoid them in the first place. You see, after listing all those potential threats, it might sound overwhelming. But dealing with pests doesn't have to be this endless chemical battle.
Right, there has to be a better way.
There is. Permaculture offers a much smarter, more sustainable approach. It's about fostering truly resilient ecosystems in your grow space. This strategy treats pest problems not as like an attack, but more as a symptom of an imbalance.
An indicator.
Exactly. It shifts our focus heavily onto prevention and working with nature to design a garden or grow room that practically self-regulates.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is that embracing these natural methods doesn't just protect your plants. It actually contributes to a healthier environment overall, right? You cut out those chemical dependencies. And often, it significantly improves the overall plant vigor and the health of your soil, too.
Absolutely. It's a genuine win-win for everyone involved, especially if you're growing something you plan to consume later. You really don't want chemical residues. It's truly about creating this self-sustaining, thriving system. So the first and arguably the most important line of defense in this holistic approach is always prevention. By creating an environment that is fundamentally unwelcome or less conducive to pests, you dramatically reduce the need for any intervention later on. This is where we really lay the foundational groundwork for success.
Okay, so prevention starts with meticulous housekeeping, essentially. Tell us about cleanliness and sanitation, the foundation.
Absolutely. Think of your grow space, especially if you're indoors, almost like a clean room, a sterile environment. First things first, always use compost that has been properly processed. That means it's been heated to at least 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 Celsius.
Why the heat?
That heat actively kills off any lurking larvae, eggs, or fungal spores that might be hiding in there. For soil, ensuring it's brand new or thoroughly sterilized is just non-negotiable if you want to start clean.
Makes sense. What else falls under sanitation?
Secondly, and this is a common trap for indoor growers, avoid using mulch indoors. While mulch is great outdoors for retaining moisture and suppressing weeds, indoors it just becomes this damp, shaded haven for pests and fungi.
Like a little bug hotel you don't want.
Exactly. The risk of providing them a safe haven simply isn't worth it in a controlled indoor environment.
I can see how those steps are crucial. What about our tools and even ourselves? Can we bring pests in?
Oh, absolutely. Great point. Tool hygiene is vital. Keep your outdoor garden tools strictly separate from your indoor grow room tools. If you absolutely must move tools between environments, they have to be sterilized. Rubbing alcohol works, soap and water, or even a quick pass with a handheld torch flame can kill hitchhiking pests or diseases.
And personal habits.
Think about your outdoor shoes. Consider them radioactive inside your grow room. They are easily one of the most common ways pests get tracked in.
Take your shoes off at the door.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
And always wash your hands thoroughly before entering your garden or handling plants, especially if you've just been outdoors or playing with pets. Finally, consistently maintain a clean grow space. Regularly sweep and mop the floor. Make sure no plant debris like fallen leaves accumulates on your growing medium surface. This denies incoming insects any easy hiding spots or condos, as some growers call them.
Okay.
And as a final barrier, if your air intake pulls air from outside, install commercial-grade filters, the kind designed for heating and cooling systems. They're excellent at keeping airborne pests and disease spores out.
So it's really about making our grow space fundamentally unwelcoming to pests from the very start. What about actively controlling the actual growing environment itself? That's environment control, making it uncomfortable for pests.
Precisely. For indoor growers, maintaining a tightly controlled, closed environment is paramount because it allows you to dictate the conditions almost entirely. And one of your most underrated yet incredibly powerful weapons against tiny invaders is forced air circulation. Yes. Powerful ventilation systems and oscillating fans placed within the grow space are indispensable. Strong, constant airflow makes it incredibly difficult for smaller flying insects like fungus gnats, thrips, spider mites on their webs to hold on, move freely, or establish nests.
It just blows them around.
Pretty much. It also significantly prevents fungal spores like powdery mildew from settling and proliferating. Pests and fungi generally prefer stagnant, still air, so keeping the air moving constantly is a simple yet profoundly effective deterrent.
How does water management, timing, and technique factor into this preventative strategy? Too much water seems like a recurrent theme.
It is. Proper irrigation is absolutely critical. Chronic overwatering creates those damp, welcoming conditions that are highly conducive to many pest infestations, especially soil dwellers like fungus gnats and also fungal diseases.
So how should we water?
Always water your plants at their base, directly into the growing medium. Try to avoid wetting the foliage unnecessarily. Wet leaves create a humid microclimate right on the leaf surface that many pests and fungi just adore.
Oh.
And here's a simple yet highly effective tip. Water during the morning hours, or early in your light cycle indoors. This allows any excess moisture on the plant or in the topsoil to evaporate quickly throughout the day with the lights and fans running. It actively discourages pests and fungal diseases like powdery mildew by ensuring the plants and soil surface dry out relatively fast.
Smart. We often talk about feeding plants, but how does the plant's own inherent health contribute to its defense? This is plant health, your best defense.
It's absolutely foundational. A robust, healthy, vigorously growing plant is naturally far more resilient. It often has the sheer vigor to simply outpace pest reproduction or shrug off minor damage. Strong plants just have stronger natural defenses.
Makes sense. Anything we can do to boost that.
For instance, consider adding silica supplements to your feeding regimen right from day one, from seedling or clone stage. Silica helps plants build healthier, thicker cell walls. This makes them physically much tougher, less susceptible to damage from pests trying to pierce or chew them.
Like armor for plants.
Sort of, yeah. And a cornerstone, maybe the cornerstone, of any effective IPM strategy is regular inspection. Make it a routine, daily if possible. Thoroughly inspect your plants. Tops of leaves, undersides, stems, soil surface for any signs of pest activity, even subtle chewed leaves, discolored patches, weird growths, or tiny insect droppings.
Catch it early.
Early detection is not just important, it's absolutely crucial. Pest populations can explode incredibly rapidly. The sooner you catch an issue, the easier it is to manage naturally, often with minimal intervention.
What about crop rotation? Breaking life cycles. This seems more geared towards outdoor growing or maybe large indoor operations.
It is, primarily for outdoor cultivation or maybe very large-scale perpetual indoor grows. Strategic crop rotation involves consistently changing the types of crops you grow in specific areas or beds from season to season.
How does that help with pests?
It directly disrupts the life cycles of soil-dwelling pests and diseases that might specialize on certain plant families. By changing what grows where, you prevent them from establishing themselves permanently or finding their preferred hosts year after year in the same spot. A good practice is to map your garden into at least 4 distinct zones and rotate plant families annually through these zones.
Any other benefits?
Yes. Beyond pest control, it also significantly improves soil health by balancing nutrient demands. For instance, following heavy nutrient feeders like cannabis with nitrogen-fixing plants like legumes helps replenish the soil and maintain long-term fertility and vitality.
Good point. And finally, just basic plant spacing, giving them room to breathe. How does this simple act impact pest control?
Adequate spacing between plants is a remarkably effective yet often overlooked cultural control. It dramatically improves air circulation around and through the plant canopy.
Air circulation again.
It's huge. This naturally reduces humidity right within the plant canopy, which is absolutely vital for minimizing the spread of fungal diseases like powdery mildew or botrytis. It also just makes the environment less appealing and less humid for many common pests. Crowded plants, on the other hand, are much more susceptible to infestations.
What is that?
Due to limited airflow, reduced light penetration into the lower canopy, and increased competition for water and nutrients. All of those things stress the plant and make it a more inviting target for pests. Giving your plants ample space is a simple yet profound way to create a naturally less hospitable environment for pests and diseases.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Instead of just relying on sprays or barriers, you can actually deploy a living, breathing army to protect your plants.
Yes, this is my favorite part.
This is truly the heart of working with nature. And it feels almost like, I don't know, magic sometimes, bringing in tiny helpers to do the hard work for you.
Indeed. Biological control involves strategically using nature's own mechanisms, natural predators, parasites, or even pathogens that target specific pests. The key to success, though, is often preemptive introduction and continuous monitoring.
So don't wait until you have a huge problem.
Ideally, no. You want to introduce these beneficials at a rate and amount that outpaces the pest's reproduction levels. You're aiming to suppress the pest population before it gets out of hand. It's about establishing this robust, natural balance where your allies are always on patrol, keeping things in check.
Love it. Let's talk about our tiny protectors.
Yeah.
Who are these beneficial insects? Your tiny protectors. Give us the A-team.
Okay, top of the list, gotta be ladybirds, or ladybugs as most people know them. Both the adult beetles and their larvae are absolutely voracious predators.
They eat a lot.
A ton. A single adult ladybug can munch through up to 50 aphids a day, but their larvae, these little alligator-looking things, eat considerably more, sometimes their entire body weight in aphids daily. All types of aphids are on their menu, plus they also snack on pollen.
How do you get them in your garden?
To attract them naturally, you can plant things like flowering herbs, dill, fennel, calendula, caraway, angelica, they love those. Or you can simply purchase live ladybug larvae online or from garden centers and release them directly onto your plants wherever you see aphids.
Cool. So they're like nature's tiny spotted guardians. What about lacewings? They look so delicate, almost fairy-like.
They do look delicate, green, and fluttery, but don't let that appearance fool you. Their larvae are ferocious predators. They're often called aphid lions for good reason.
Aphid lions.
Yeah, they can devour up to 200 aphids per week each, including things like blackfly. They also eat other small pests like thrips, aphid larvae, and they enjoy honeydew too.
How do you attract lacewings?
Plant umbrella-shaped flowers again. Things like dill, fennel, Queen Anne's lace work well. You can also create little overwintering shelters for them by hanging corrugated cardboard inside a cut-off plastic bottle in a shrub. And just like ladybirds, you can readily buy lacewing larvae or eggs online or at larger garden centers.
I love how nature provides such elegant solutions. And hoverflies. They're often mistaken for bees or wasps, aren't they?
They are, very often. They have those yellow and black stripes, which is a clever mimicry to deter predators. But hoverflies are completely harmless to us. They don't sting. Their larvae, however, are absolute aphid exterminators.
Another aphid eater.
Oh, yeah. They also feed on thrips and even small caterpillars. The adult hoverflies primarily consume nectar, acting as pollinators too. So, to attract them, grow plants with easily accessible, open flowers. Think single-flowered dahlias, calendulas, cosmos, achilleas. They don't have long tongues like bees. And again, you can purchase hoverfly larvae to release directly onto pest populations.
Fantastic. And what about spiders? I know some people get squeamish, but they're definitely beneficial in the garden, right?
Absolutely crucial. Spiders are unsung heroes. These eight-legged predators play a huge role in maintaining balance in any garden ecosystem. You'll often see their intricate webs catching all sorts of winged pests like gnats, flies, aphids.
Beyond the web spinners.
Yeah, don't forget the hunting spiders. Wolf spiders patrol the ground level, hunting down bugs and slugs. Crab spiders are masters of camouflage, hiding on flowers and ambushing prey. Jumping spiders are active during the day, great at catching flies. To encourage spiders, simply provide diverse habitats, grow a variety of trees, shrubs, flowering plants, give them places to live and hunt.
Good advice. Let's not forget the ground-level helpers. Ground and rove beetles. What do they do?
Most ground beetles are dark-colored, often with metallic sheen. They are primarily predatory, feeding at ground level on various bugs, slugs, snails, insect eggs. They're particularly useful for controlling soil pests like leather jackets and cutworms. Some, like the striking violet ground beetle, even climb plants to hunt for aphids and caterpillars.
And rove beetles.
Rove beetles perform similar roles, and some species are even more efficient predators. They can help control things like red spider mites, aphids, and fungus gnat larvae. The devil's coach horse is a well-known large rove beetle. To encourage both ground and rove beetles, you can strategically place logs, flat stones, or even upturned pots in your garden to give them shelter.
Creating little habitats. This is truly a full ecosystem approach.
Right.
Now, what are parasitic wasps or parasitoids? They sound a bit intense.
They sound intense, but they are incredibly effective and mostly tiny, often unnoticed. Their strategy is amazing. They eventually kill their hosts. There are countless species. Some resemble thin, common wasps. Others look more like tiny gaunt flies, but almost all have a characteristic narrow waist.
How do they work?
The adult female wasp actively searches out a specific host insect, like an aphid, caterpillar, or whitefly larva. She then lays one or more eggs inside the host's body. The wasp larvae hatch and feed on the host's internal fluids and fat reserves, eventually consuming vital organs and pupating right inside the dead or dying host.
Nature is metal.
It really is. And specific types are incredibly valuable in cannabis cultivation. Aphidius species, for example, are tiny 2 mm black wasps renowned for controlling aphids. They can even detect the chemical signals released by plants under aphid attack.
Wow. Others.
Trichogramma wasps are excellent against moth eggs, so they prevent caterpillar problems before they start. Species like Dacnusa sibirica and Diglyphus isaiah are effective predators of leaf miner larvae. And we already mentioned Incarsia formosa, widely used for whitefly control. It lays eggs in the 3rd and 4th stage whitefly larval scales, turning them black. It also host feeds on younger scales, acting as a direct predator too. Regular preventive releases of Incarsia are highly recommended for ongoing whitefly management in greenhouses.
Amazing. And some ancient predators like centipedes also make the beneficial list.
Indeed. Easily identifiable by their flattened, segmented bodies and numerous legs, though rarely actually 100. These ancient predators primarily hunt and devour slugs, woodlice, and other earth-dwelling grubs and insects, mostly active at night. They use their effective antennae to find prey and have modified front legs that act like fangs to inject venom.
Where do they like to hang out?
They like damp, dark places. You'll find them sheltering under logs, stones, leaf litter, landscape fabric, or anything close to the ground that offers protection from sunlight and predators like birds.
Soldier beetles sound like they live up to their name. What do?
The most common one, the red soldier beetle, looks a bit like a 17th century British redcoat soldier, hence the name. They are highly effective allied killing machines, devouring aphids and caterpillars on plants. The adults also feed on pollen and nectar, contributing to pollination, and their larvae hunt slugs and snails at ground level.
How to attract them?
Grow plants like hydrangea, goldenrod, catnip, asters, and ornamental grasses. They're most active in the summer, usually June through August, as they have a relatively short adult lifespan. And let's not forget other valuable generalist predators like assassin bugs and minute pirate bugs. They eat a wide range of pests and are great allies to have around.
It's like building a whole security team.
Yeah.
Beyond insects, what about beneficial mites? Microscopic guardians. We mentioned them for spider mites and thrips.
Yes, these tiny arthropods are absolute powerhouses. They are the natural enemies of many plant-feeding mites and small insects. They actively hunt down their prey, pierce their bodies, and suck out the fluids. As they feed, they reproduce rapidly, effectively crashing pest populations and deterring future infestations.
Yeah, they're safe.
Crucially, yes. They are harmless to plants and generally safe for humans and pets. They're precise, targeted, and highly effective. We talked about the specialists for spider mites, Phytocoelus persimilis, often sold as Spidex, and Neocoelus califormicus, Spickle. They are voracious spider mite eaters, tackling all life stages.
And for thrips.
For thrips, Neocoelus cucumerus, Thripex, and Amblyceus andersoni, Ansomite, XL. Then you have the generalist predatory mites like Amblyceus swirsky, Amblydromelus lamonicus, or Transius montarensis. These guys can tackle a wider array of pests, including thrips and whiteflies, especially eggs and young larvae.
Generalists sound useful.
They are, and a key advantage is that many generalists can survive and even reproduce on alternative food sources like pollen when pest populations are low. This helps build strong resident populations ready for when pests do appear. And for fungus gnats down in the soil, mites like Macrochellus robustulus and Stratiolaps simitus, often sold as Entomite M, prey on their larvae, preventing them from maturing into those annoying adults.
How do you actually introduce these microscopic warriors into your grow? You can't just sprinkle them like ladybugs, can you?
Well, you sort of can. They are usually available in tubes or bottles mixed with a carrier material like vermiculite or bran. You gently shake this mixture directly onto the plant foliage. This is excellent for a swift response to an active infestation. Alternatively, they often come in slow-release sachets. These are like little breeding bags you hang on the plants. The mites reproduce inside the sachet and then gradually disperse out into your grow space over several weeks. This is great for prevention or maintaining populations.
What about mites that live in the soil?
For species that don't fly or move easily between plants, like some soil-dwelling mites, you either need to ensure your plant's leaves are touching to create bridges or use a distribution system. Some companies offer applicators like an air bug that help blow the mites around the grow space. And as mentioned, generalist predatory mites can even be supplemented with special alternative food sachets if pest populations get really low, just to keep their numbers up.
Clever. And then there are the unseen forces in the soil. Beneficial nematodes, the soil's silent warriors. We mentioned these for a few pests already.
Yes, these are fantastic tools, especially for soil-dwelling pests. They are live, microscopic, unsegmented worms. Don't picture earthworms. They are incredibly effective, parasitizing over 200 species of soil pests without leaving any harmful residue.
And they're compatible with other things.
Generally, yes. They're compatible with most common fertilizers and even many insecticides, making them a versatile tool for soil-bound issues. They are particularly effective against fungus gnats. They target all the soil stages, larvae and pupa. They also go after reed aphids, thrips, pupa that drop into the soil, various grubs, and cutworms.
Specific ones for specific pests.
Yes. For root maggots, specific types like Steinernema filtio or Heterohabditis bacteriophora are typically used. And for slugs and snails, Phasmarhabditis californica is the specialist nematode. They are typically applied as a simple soil drench. You just mix them with water and pour them onto the soil. Very easy to use.
Finally, let's look at beneficial microbes, the microscopic allies. Bacteria and fungi working for us.
Exactly. Certain strains of beneficial bacteria and fungi can actively fight plant diseases, especially fungal ones like downy mildew and botrytis, bud rot, without harming your plants at all. Applying things like compost extracts or commercially prepared microbial teas directly populates the leaf surfaces with these good guys.
How does that help?
They provide strong competition against the pathogenic fungi. They basically take up space and resources, physically preventing the bad fungi from getting established. This is primarily a prevention strategy, creating a kind of protective shield on the leaves. But they also bolster existing treatment efforts and can even trigger the plant's own natural systemic resistance, making the plant stronger from within.
And in the soil.
When applied to the soil, beneficial microbes can physically colonize plant roots, forming a protective barrier that prevents root-rotting fungi like Fusarium, Pythium, and Rhizoctonia from infecting your crops. It's truly about fostering a healthy, diverse microbiome both above and below the soil line. A healthy plant starts with healthy roots and healthy microbes.
Okay, so we've got our ecosystem allies. But sometimes the simplest solutions are surprisingly effective too, right? These are your hands-on tactics, your direct line of defense that you can implement yourself immediately. You don't necessarily need to order bugs online for these.
That's exactly right. These methods involve physically removing pests or blocking their access, and while they can be labor-intensive in very large gardens, they are incredibly effective, especially for home growers or smaller setups. They provide immediate, targeted relief and give you that sense of direct action, which can be quite satisfying.
Let's start with the most basic, almost primal method, hand picking.
Yep. For larger, more visible pests like caterpillars or maybe big slugs, you can simply pick them off your plants by hand and dispose of them as you see fit. Squishing is effective. For soft-bodied pests like aphids, especially if you catch an infestation early, just crushing small clusters with your fingers is easy, effective, and free.
Direct action. What about traps? They seem pretty straightforward, especially for monitoring pest levels.
They are, and they're highly effective for both monitoring and control. We mentioned yellow sticky traps already. They're incredibly useful, especially for flying pests like whiteflies, fungus gnats, and winged aphids, because these insects are strongly attracted to the color yellow.
Where should you place them?
Place them strategically, some horizontally on the soil surface for emerging pests like fungus gnats, and others hanging vertically near the top of the plant canopy for flyers. They not only trap adult pests, reducing breeding populations, but they also serve as an invaluable early warning system. You see a few bugs on the traps, you know it's time to act.
Any downsides?
The main one is that they can inadvertently catch beneficial flying insects too, like parasitic wasps or lacewings. So you need to position them thoughtfully and maybe only use them intensively when pest pressure is high, or time their use carefully if you're actively releasing biological control agents.
Good point. Other types of traps.
Pheromone traps can also be used. These release synthetic versions of insect sex pheromones to lure specific male pests, disrupting their breeding cycles or trapping them en masse. And for slugs and snails, you can use simple bait traps like a shallow dish of beer sunk into the soil. They're attracted to the yeast, crawl in and drown. You can then dispose of them humanely.
Beer traps. Classic. And for building a more physical defense, we have barriers and repellents, like building fortifications.
Exactly. These are your garden fortifications. For outdoor cannabis cultivation, using grow tents or hoop houses covered in fine insect netting offers an excellent extra layer of protection against flying insects and even airborne diseases while still allowing sunlight and airflow.
Simple row covers, too.
Simple row covers or netting draped over plants can physically prevent many insects from ever reaching your crops. Raising your planting beds off the ground can deter some burrowing pests. And we talked about soil barriers at ground level. Creating a flat, dry, clear area around your plants makes it difficult for slugs and snails to cross. A thin line of diatomaceous earth or salty sand creates that impassable, dehydrating barrier for many crawling pests.
And the copper for slugs.
Yes, that copper ring or copper tape placed right at the bottom of your plant stem can effectively prevent slugs and snails from climbing upwards. And for root maggots, remember that 18-inch collar of foam rubber or even stiff paper placed snugly around the base of the plant stem. That can physically prevent the adult flies from laying their eggs right at the soil line.
Clever tricks. What about using water as a weapon? That brings us to water jets, just blasting them off.
Water can be a surprisingly effective physical tool, especially for pests like spider mites or aphids that colonize leaf surfaces. A strong jet of water, maybe from a hose sprayer, aimed carefully across the undersides of leaves, can physically dislodge and blast entire colonies loose.
Does it really work?
It significantly slows their march and disrupts their webs or clusters. It's a non-chemical way to knock back their numbers and disrupt their hold on the plant. Regular misting, just with plain water, can also deter pests like thrips by effectively flooding them on the leaf surface, making it difficult for them to move, feed, and thrive.
Good tip. And if parts of the plant are just too far gone, too infested, we have to resort to removing infested parts.
Sometimes, yeah, tactical retreat is necessary to save the rest of the plant or prevent spread. If a specific plant part but a branch, a few leaves is heavily infested, say more than 50% covered or damaged by whiteflies, scale, or caterpillars, it's often best to prune it off entirely.
And then what?
Crucially, you need to promptly and properly dispose of this infested material. Don't just toss it on the compost pile nearby. Ideally, burn it or bag it tightly and remove it from your property. Or you could heat it to over 140 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 C, to ensure you kill any remaining pests or eggs and prevent their spread back to your healthy plants.
What about leaf miners again?
For leaf miners, remember you can try squishing the larva at the end of its tunnel within the leaf. Or you can carefully remove the affected leaves. But always adhere to that caution. Try not to remove more than about 1/3 of the plant's total leaves at any single time. Doing so can severely hinder photosynthesis and stress the plant unnecessarily, potentially making it more vulnerable. Pruning requires careful judgment.
Okay, so beyond the beneficial organisms and the physical barriers, there's still a really powerful arsenal of natural remedies and organic compounds that we can use to directly combat pests and diseases when needed. These are the more specialized tools in your weed bug kit that can make a real difference when you need a more direct, immediate intervention. Yeah, and what's so cool about many of these, as you mentioned, is they're derived from plants themselves, or sometimes even common household items.
Yeah.
But, and this is a big but, it's absolutely critical to know how to use them effectively. And crucially, to always avoid those harsh synthetic chemicals that can make your final harvest potentially unsafe for consumption, or just harm the very ecosystem you're trying to cultivate. Safety and efficacy, they go hand in hand here.
Absolutely. Let's start with a really versatile widely used organic solution. Neem oil, the multi-purpose botanical, where does it come from?
It's from the neem tree, right?
That's a Directa indica.
Exactly. And its magic lies mainly in a compound called azadirachtin, which is a powerful botanical insecticide. But it's not just a contact killer. Research shows it has clear dose-dependent pesticidal activity. It can cause high mortality rates up to 100% at higher doses in various insect larvae. It significantly reduces their survival time and their ability to produce future offspring.
How does it work inside the insect? Its true power lies in how it disrupts insect growth, feeding, and reproduction from the inside out. It acts as an anti-fedant, a growth regulator, and can even affect fertility. It basically turns your plant into this invisible force field against future attacks for a while. And it's effective against a broad spectrum of pests. We're talking thrips, whiteflies, aphids, mites, fungus gnats as a drench, root maggots, even harmful nematodes.
Wow, quite the list. So how do we use it effectively? Is it better as a foliar spray or as a soil drench?
Both methods are effective depending on the target pest. Most commonly, it's applied as a foliar spray directly onto the green parts of the plant, the leaves, top and bottom, branches, and stems. Just remember the important caveat. Try to avoid spraying the actual flowers or buds, especially as you get closer to harvest time, as the oil can affect their quality, aroma, and flavor.
Okay, avoid the buds. What about the soil drench?
It can be very effective when applied as a soil drench to combat soil-dwelling pests, like fungus gnat larvae right at their source. It affects the larval stage in the soil and can also inhibit fungal reproduction in the soil. It's also a key component, as we mentioned, for dealing with root maggots and those stubborn symphalids. Those symphalids might need higher concentrations or combining neem with other treatments like that tobacco juice.
And how do we prepare it? Just mix oil and water. And when's the best time to apply it?
Good questions. To prepare it, you typically mix about 1 to 2 teaspoons of concentrated cold-pressed neem oil with about 4 to 5 liters, or roughly a gallon, of warm, not hot water. Critically, you need to add a few drops of mild liquid soap, like a simple dish soap or an insecticidal soap.
Why this soap?
The soap acts as an emulsifier. Oil and water don't mix right. The soap helps the neem oil disperse evenly throughout the water and also helps the mixture stick effectively to the plant surfaces, especially waxy leaves.
Smart. And timing.
For timing, always apply neem oil during the dark hours, so in the evening outdoors, or when the lights are switched off for indoor grows. This is really important.
Why is that?
It prevents potential leaf burn that can happen if strong sunlight hits leaves coated in oil. It also maximizes the oil's efficacy, as many pests are more active or vulnerable at night, and the oil persists longer without UV degradation. Ensure you get full coverage, paying special attention to the undersides of leaves where many pests hide. You can spray pretty liberally. Your plants can usually handle it well, but the pests will be very, very unhappy.
Got it. Any other important considerations when using neem oil? You mentioned it wasn't selective.
Yes, that's a crucial point, often overlooked. While highly effective against pests, neem oil is not entirely selective. It can temporarily impact beneficial fungi and insects in the soil food web, what we call the rhizosphere, that crucial active zone right around the plant roots.
So if you use it as a soil drench.
If you use it regularly as a soil drench, it's a good idea to consider adding rich compost, worm castings, or specific beneficial microbial inoculants back to the soil after the neem treatments are done. This helps the beneficial microbial community recover and reestablish its balance. And you might need to repeat neem applications maybe every few days or weekly, depending on the pest pressure, until the problem significantly recedes.
Okay, good to know. Now for something quite new and frankly intriguing, CBD oil, a promising new larvicide. This sounds completely unexpected. CBD oil for pests. Tell us what the research has shown.
That truly is exciting, yeah, and definitely an emerging area of research. While neem oil is the well-established go-to botanical, recent scientific studies have actually demonstrated that cannabidiol CBD oil, derived directly from Cannabis sativa L, hemp especially, also possesses significant insecticidal properties.
Against which insects?
The research has specifically shown dose-dependent pesticidal activity against various insect larvae. Similar to neem, it led to substantial mortality again, potentially up to 100% at high enough doses in lab settings, and a measurable reduction in their survival time and the number of offspring they produced.
So it's primarily a larvicide.
Primarily, yes, based on current research. This highlights CBD oil's potential value specifically as a larvicide. It suggests it could potentially be integrated into organic pest management programs in the future, especially seeing as it could be a valuable byproduct of the burgeoning hemp cultivation industry. It offers this fascinating plant-derived option for pest control literally within the cannabis world itself. Still early days, but very promising.
Very cool. Okay, next we have pyrethrin, the chrysanthemum extract. This is another
Yeah.
plant-based one, right?
Well, correct. This is a powerful natural pesticide extracted from chrysanthemum flowers, specifically Chrysanthemum cinerarifolium. Pyrethrin is effective against a wide variety of common pests, including aphids, thrips, whiteflies, spider mites, fungus gnats. It's quite broad spectrum. It works by quickly affecting the nervous system of insects, causing paralysis.
Sounds potent. Any downsides?
It is potent, but it also breaks down relatively quickly in sunlight, which is good from a residue perspective. However, a key word of caution. If you find yourself needing to use pyrethrin-based products frequently, you absolutely should rotate them with other natural control methods that have different modes of action, like neem oil or insecticidal soaps,
Rotate.
to prevent pests from developing resistance to pyrethrin over time. Insects are remarkably adaptable, and relying too heavily on one mode of action is a recipe for creating resistant populations. Rotation is key for long-term effectiveness.
Good advice. And then there's diatomaceous earth, DE. The dehydrating powder. This sounds like a physical solution more than a chemical one, right? Like tiny shards of glass.
It absolutely is a physical or mechanical control, not chemical. Diatomaceous earth food grade is what you want is a very fine powder made from the fossilized silica shells of ancient aquatic organisms called diatoms. Under a microscope, these particles have sharp edges.
So it cuts them.
Not exactly cuts them, but it works mechanically. When crawling insects come into contact with DE, the sharp particles scratch or abrade their waxy outer exoskeleton layer. This waxy layer is crucial for preventing water loss. Once it's compromised, the insect rapidly loses moisture and effectively dehydrates and dies.
Brutal. Which pests does it work on?
It's primarily effective against crawling insects with exoskeletons. Think ants, mites when crawling, beetles, slugs, snails, earwigs, even cockroaches sometimes. You can mix it into your original soil mix as a preventative measure against soil pests, or more commonly, you sprinkle it as a dry barrier around the base of your plants or anywhere pests might crawl to access them. It only works when dry, though.
Only when dry. Okay.
Yeah.
What about simple and aromatic plant-based sprays? I imagine these are often accessible home remedies people can whip up.
Many are, yes. And they can be quite effective, especially for lighter infestations or as general deterrents. A simple solution of mild soap, like Castile soap or specific insecticidal soap, not harsh detergents mixed with water, is surprisingly effective. It works by suffocating soft-bodied pests like aphids and mites, basically washing away or disrupting their protective outer layer.
What else from the kitchen or medicine cabinet?
A mix of rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and water, maybe 50-50 or less alcohol, can be used to directly wipe away aphids or scale insects with a cotton swab, or sometimes sprayed lightly to knock down pests like crickets. Ground garlic, mint leaves, even coffee grounds sprinkled around your plants can act as general pest deterrents due to their strong aromas repelling insects.
Garlic and pepper sprays.
Yes, garlic and hot pepper mists are classic DIY remedies, often effective for deterring chewing insects like caterpillars or beetles. You basically blend garlic cloves or hot peppers like cayenne or habanero, wear gloves, with water, strain it well, add a drop of soap as an emulsifier, and spray it. The capsaicin in peppers is a strong irritant.
And can essential oils play a role in this aromatic defense strategy?
Absolutely. Highly aromatic essential oils, think cinnamon oil, peppermint oil, clove oil, rosemary oil, thyme oil can be very effective deterrents. Pests just don't like those strong scents. You need to dilute them properly in water with an emulsifier, like soap, because they are potent, but they are generally considered safe for cannabis plants when used in manageable, correctly diluted doses.
What about that tobacco juice for symphilids? Is that common?
It's a more niche, potent remedy, usually reserved for really persistent pests like symphilids where other things haven't worked. Remember, nicotine is a powerful poison. Steep about 10 cigarettes, just the tobacco, not the filters, in a gallon of water until it turns a tea to coffee color. Strain it thoroughly. Applying this drench simultaneously with a neem oil drench has proven effective for some growers against symphilids, but handle with care, it's toxic.
Good warning. Any other plant extracts?
Some studies suggest that comfrey leaf extract can markedly decrease mildew infections, possibly due to some protective action and maybe by enhancing the plant's own photosynthetic activity. Quilaja extracts from the soapbark tree are another effective plant-derived ingredient sometimes found in organic pesticides. And even simple diluted apple cider vinegar, a common household item, is often cited as a readily available natural remedy against certain fungal diseases like powdery mildew, though used cautiously as it's acidic.
Okay, lots of options there. Let's delve into fungal biopesticides. Nature's pathogens. This sounds like a more advanced natural solution, actually harnessing specific fungi against pests. How does that work?
It is a more sophisticated approach, yeah, using nature's own biological warfare. These commercial biopesticides contain live spores of specific entomopathogenic fungi, that just means fungi that naturally infect and kill insects. They don't harm plants or humans. They are particularly effective against pests like whiteflies, and some strains can also control thrips and two-spotted spider mites.
Can you give some examples?
Sure, products containing Beauveria bassiana, like Botanigard WP or Naturalacell, are common. Beauveria primarily infects whitefly scales, but can also get pupa in adults and even tobacco whitefly eggs. Another one is Verticillium lacania, sometimes sold as mycodal, which also infects whitefly scales, pupa, and adults. Some Beauveria strains, like in Naturalacell, also infect thrips and have shown activity against spider mites, especially in high humidity.
What are the key application considerations for these fungal solutions? You mentioned humidity. They sound like they need specific conditions to work well.
You've hit on the critical point. Yes, these are living organisms, so they have environmental requirements. These fungal products generally work best in conditions of high humidity, for instance. 60–70% relative humidity might be needed for Naturalacell, while some Beauveria bassiana strains prefer over 70% or even higher for optimal spore germination and infection. They also like warm temperatures, typically in the 20–30 degrees C range, around 70–85 degrees Fahr.
So you might need to boost humidity.
Yes, for best results, you might need to apply them in the evening or when lights are off, and perhaps temporarily manipulate the humidity, like closing vents in a greenhouse for a few hours after spraying to enhance their efficacy. Good, thorough application coverage, especially hitting the growing points and the undersides of leaves where pests hide, is absolutely essential for the fungal spores to make direct contact with the target pests.
Anything to avoid when using them?
Very important. Avoid using chemical fungicides for at least several days before and after applying a fungal biopesticide. The fungicides will kill the beneficial fungi you just introduced, rendering the treatment useless. Read the product label carefully for specific compatibilities and instructions.
Makes sense. Are there any other organic solutions that are useful to have in our back pocket?
Definitely. We mentioned hydrogen peroxide earlier for fungus gnat larvae. A diluted solution, like 1 part standard 3% H2O2 to 3 or 4 parts water, can be applied directly to the top of the grow medium. It can also be sprayed directly onto leaves to quickly oxidize and kill surface fungi, like powdery mildew or even downy mildew on contact. It breaks down quickly into just water and oxygen.
What about other fungal fighters?
Potassium bicarbonate and potassium silicate are compounds often found in organic fungicides. They work by disrupting the cell walls or changing the pH on the leaf surface, designed to kill fungal infections like powdery mildew pretty much instantly on contact.
And be candy.
Yes, Bacillus thuringiensis, BT, we mentioned it for caterpillars. It's a bacterium that produces proteins toxic only to certain insect larvae when they ingest it. Different strains target different insects.
Yeah.
And a specific strain, Bacillus thuringiensis var. Israelensis, often called BT, is a highly effective biological larvicide specifically targeting the larvae of flies like fungus gnats and mosquitoes without harming the plant itself or most other organisms. Often comes as granules or dunks you add to water or soil.
Lots of targeted options. Now, wrapping up this section, what are the most important spraying considerations we should keep in mind for all these natural remedies we've discussed? Seems like there are a few universal rules for success.
You're absolutely right. There are some key best practices. Crucially, almost always use a spreader sticker or at least a few drops of mild dish soap with your foliar sprays.
Why is that so important?
This surfactant or emulsifier does 2 things. It helps the spray solution spread evenly across the leaf surface, preventing beating, and it helps it stick better, especially to leaves that might be developing those waxy, resinous coatings common on cannabis. Better sticking means better coverage and longer contact time, which equals better efficacy.
Good tip. What else?
Be aware that pretty much any spray applied to plants, even plain water sometimes, can temporarily slow plant growth slightly by clogging the stomata, those tiny pores on the leaves that the plant uses for gas exchange, like breathing.
So sprays can kind of suffocate the leaves a bit?
Temporarily, yes. To help the plant recover and resume vigorous growth quickly, it's often a good idea to spray the plants with just plain, pH-balanced water, maybe 1 or 2 days after applying your pest control solution. This can help wash off residues and clear those stomata.
Okay, like a rinse cycle. And testing first.
Absolutely critical. Always, always test any new remedy or spray mix on a small, inconspicuous area of one plant first, maybe a lower leaf. Wait 24 to 48 hours and check carefully for any signs of damage like burning, spotting, or yellowing before you go ahead and apply it widely to your entire crop. Better safe than sorry.
Definitely. And finally, safety first, especially considering what we're growing here.
Absolutely paramount. Remember, for plants you intend to eventually inhale or ingest, you must prioritize eco-friendly organic pesticides and natural remedies. Stay completely clear of synthetic chemical pesticides. They can wreak havoc on the beneficial ecosystem you're trying to build, they can persist in the plant tissues, and they can potentially make your final harvest unsafe or simply inedible. And always ensure enough time passes between your last application of even potent organic sprays and your harvest date. Check product labels for pre-harvest intervals, PHIs if available, or err on the side of caution, giving residues ample time to break down or dissipate naturally. When in doubt, choose the gentlest effective option and prioritize long-term prevention over reactive spraying.
Okay, wow. This deep dive has armed us with so many incredible tools and strategies for tackling cannabis pests naturally. It's a lot of information. But the big question is, how do we weave all these different threads, the cultural controls, the beneficials, the natural sprays together into one cohesive, powerful, and crucially manageable strategy? For a grower, especially someone newer, it can feel like a lot to juggle.
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of integrated pest management, or IPM. Its real beauty is its holistic nature. It's not about finding that one single magic bullet product. It's about embracing a layered, thoughtful, and proactive approach that fundamentally shifts your role. You move from being just a reactive pest controller to becoming more of an ecosystem steward.
An ecosystem steward. I like that.
Yeah, it's about intelligently designing and managing your garden or grow space so that it becomes naturally resilient, almost self-sufficient in handling minor pest issues.
So the first step seems to be fully embrace the holistic approach. What does that really mean for a cannabis grower in day-to-day practice?
In practice, it means acknowledging upfront that no single method or product holds the key to getting rid of all potential cannabis pests. The most effective, sustainable strategy always combines multiple approaches. Think of it like layers of defense.
Okay, what are the layers?
You start with diligent cultural controls as your foundation. We talked about cleanliness, environmental management, using clean soil, good watering practices. Then you invite and support your beneficial biological allies, the predatory insects, mites, nematodes, microbes. And then you have your targeted natural remedies ready as a backup for specific flare-ups when needed. And always, always, always prioritize prevention first.
Prevention, prevention, prevention.
Exactly. Basic cleanliness, rigorous environmental control, like good airflow, regulated humidity, using sterilized soil, and consistently maintaining healthy, vigorous plants through proper feeding and care. These are your absolute primary defenses. These measures proactively create an environment where pests are simply far less likely to gain a foothold and establish themselves in the first place. It significantly reduces your workload and stress down the line.
Then, once that strong foundation of prevention is dialed in, it's really about being constantly observant, isn't it? That's vigilant monitoring and early intervention.
Precisely. You need to implement a routine, a habit of regularly inspecting your plants. Make it a daily walkthrough if you possibly can, even just for a few minutes. Pay special attention to any plants that seem weak or stressed, as pests often target those first. They're like the weak antelope in the herd.
An analogy.
Use tools like those yellow sticky traps, not just for trapping pests, but primarily for monitoring adult pest populations. They are your early warning system, your canaries in the coal mine.
So when you see something,
The moment you identify even a few pests, whether on a trap or on a leaf, act fast. Apply the appropriate beneficials or natural remedies immediately. Don't wait, thinking, oh, it's just a few. Waiting, even just a day or two with some pests, can lead to rapid population explosions that become exponentially harder and more costly to control later. Early, decisive intervention is absolutely key to minimizing damage and staying ahead of the curve.
and what about deliberately building in multiple layers of defense? You called it synergy earlier. This is layering solutions for resilience. How do we do that?
This is where you truly start working with nature, creating a more complex and therefore more stable system. Companion planting is a fantastic strategy, especially outdoors or in larger greenhouses. Strategically pair plants that benefit each other.
Examples.
We mentioned marigolds deterring whiteflies and nematodes while attracting ladybirds. Nasturtiums can act as trap crops, drawing aphids away from your main cannabis plants. Planting aromatic herbs like basil, rosemary, or mint around the perimeter might help repel certain pests.
So plan your garden layout.
Yes. And dedicate a portion of your growing space, maybe 20–30% if possible, especially outdoors, to plants that specifically attract and support beneficial insects and pollinators, things like dill, fennel, yarrow, alyssum. Consider installing insect hotels, maybe a birdhouse, providing shallow water sources. You're actively building a habitat for your allies.
And then supplement.
Then, when needed, complement this natural background defense with targeted releases of purchased beneficial insects or mites for specific pest problems you identify. And, of course, have your arsenal of targeted natural sprays, neem oil, insecticidal soaps, maybe specific essential oil blends ready to use responsibly as needed, applying them with proper timing, like during dark hours, and ensuring you get full, comprehensive coverage. It's multiple tactics working together.
It really sounds like it's also about deeply understanding your own unique growing environment.
Yeah.
How do we adapt to your specific conditions?
That's absolutely vital. You have to recognize that indoor cultivation offers much more control over environmental factors like temperature, humidity, and prevents easy access for many external pests. Outdoor cultivation, conversely, inherently carries a higher risk simply due to exposure to a wider array of pests and diseases blowing in or crawling in from the surrounding environment.
Because strategies differ.
Yes. If you're growing outdoors, implementing physical barriers like grow tents or row covers, and really focusing on companion planting and attracting local beneficials becomes even more critical for protection. Indoors, you have more control over humidity and airflow, which are powerful tools. You also need to intimately understand your specific temperature ranges, your typical humidity levels, the overall scale of your grow. These factors significantly influence which beneficials will thrive in your particular setup. Some like it hotter, some cooler, some need high humidity, and also which natural remedies will be most effective and safest to use. There's really no single one-size-fits-all IPM prescription. It's about tailoring your strategy intelligently to your unique conditions and challenges.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed by all this or facing a really tough infestation, it's totally okay to seek expert guidance, right? This is a complex biological area.
100%. Absolutely. Don't ever hesitate to consult with reputable suppliers of beneficial insects or organic pest control products. These companies often employ entomologists or horticultural specialists who can offer invaluable tailored advice.
What can they help with?
They can help you correctly identify the pest you're dealing with, select the most appropriate beneficial species for that pest and your conditions, determine the correct quantities and release rates for your grow size, advise on optimal release timing, and even help set up continuity schedules for ongoing preventative releases if needed. They are experts in this specific niche and can be an incredible resource, potentially saving you a lot of time, money, and frustration. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Great advice. So wrapping this section up, it sounds like the core message is that this isn't a quick fix. It's an ongoing process.
Right.
That IPM is an ongoing journey.
That's the fundamental takeaway, yes. Remember, permaculture-based pest management, true IPM, isn't a magic pill or a single application you do once. It's a dynamic, ongoing journey of observation, learning, adaptation, and building a partnership with the natural processes in your garden.
But the payoff is worth it.
Absolutely. The true beauty of this holistic approach lies in its cumulative effects. Each season, each grow cycle where you practice these principles, your garden or grow space will naturally become more resilient, more balanced, and hopefully require less intensive intervention from you. Your role gradually, organically shifts from being a frantic pest controller constantly putting out fires to becoming a thoughtful, observant ecosystem steward. You're creating the conditions where nature itself does the heavy lifting, leading ultimately to a healthier, more productive, and truly sustainable harvest.
So there you have it, everyone. A really comprehensive deep dive into protecting your precious cannabis plants using the incredible power of nature. We've journeyed all the way from identifying those common culprits, aphids, mites, gnats, and all their friends, to building a robust, all-natural, integrated pest management strategy right from the ground up.
Yeah, we covered a lot, from the industrious ladybugs and lacewings to the versatile neem oil, from simple yellow sticky traps to complex fungal biopesticides and beneficial microbes. You now have, hopefully, a wealth of actionable knowledge right at your fingertips.
And what feels truly profound here, I think, is that fundamental shift in perspective you mentioned. Instead of just seeing pests as enemies, as invaders to be eradicated with brute force chemicals, we've learned to view them more as indicators, maybe messengers, signaling an imbalance in the system. And that encourages us as growers to foster a more resilient, a more thriving, and ultimately a more self-regulating ecosystem.
Exactly. By understanding and working with these intricate natural cycles, you're not just solving a pest problem in the short term, you're actually cultivating a healthier, more productive, and profoundly more sustainable garden for the long haul.
It's an incredibly empowering thought, isn't it? That the most effective, most elegant solutions to some of our biggest gardening challenges lie not in harsh synthetic chemicals, but in simply understanding and respecting the intricate balance of the natural world all around us.
It really is.
So as you tend to your cannabis plants after listening to this, maybe consider this. How can you further deepen your partnership with nature in your own grow space? How can you help create an even more self-regulating and vibrant environment? What stands out to you from today's deep dive that you think you'll try first in your own garden?
Keep learning, keep observing your plants closely, and keep cultivating that harmony. Nature usually has the answers if we just listen.